there's all sorts of ways to kind of change how we're experiencing time, even if time is moving forward at the exact same rate, regardless of what we do.
Hi, I'm Dr. Bree Hearn, and welcome to The Habit Nerd, the podcast where we explore the habits that shape how we live, work, and lead. Most of what we do each day isn't driven by big, conscious decisions. It's driven by habits, quiet, repeated patterns that over time become the silent architects of our lives. In these solo episodes, I'll walk you through the ideas, research, and practical strategies you can actually apply so you can shift those patterns with intention and create change that sticks. Let's dive in. Hi there, Habit Nerds. Welcome to today's episode. It's a really exciting one. My guest is somebody that I have been following for years and years and years now. Her name is Laura Vanderkam. Laura is one of the world's leading voices on time management and productivity. She's the author of 7 books, including her latest one, Big Time, A Simple Path to Time Abundance. And this book challenges the idea that we're all perpetually running out of time, and it offers a more expansive and hopeful way to think about our days. Laura is also the host of 2 popular podcasts, and Laura's short episodes of Before Breakfast have been in my headphones just about every day for years and years now. Laura's work has appeared in publications including the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, Fortune, and Fast Company. Through years of research and tracking how real people spend their time, Laura has helped millions rethink what it means to be busy, productive, and fulfilled. So today we're exploring how to create a greater sense of time abundance, even in a very full life. Now, Laura, my Habit Nerd listeners can probably sense my absolute delight to have landed you as a guest. And I know once you start giving us all of your golden insights, they will recognize just how much your work has informed and inspired my own. So full credit to you, Laura, and with enormous gratitude, welcome to the Habit Nerd podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to chat about time and how we spend it. This is my favorite topic for sure.
Great. We can nerd out together. Laura, most productivity advice starts from the assumption that we're running out of time. But in Big Time, you argue that it's almost the opposite. What made you realize that the real problem wasn't time scarcity, but our relationship with time?
Well, I've been tracking my time for a great many years, and I have had thousands of other people track time for me as well. And as part of this, many people find that there is just more space within any given week than they had been assuming there was. A lot of time passes mindlessly, and so we don't really even notice where it is going, what we are doing with it. We don't remember what we do with it. And so it feels almost like it didn't exist. But when you can kind of get your head around that time being there, about there being 168 hours in a week and about what you can do at that time, it starts to feel more abundant. We start to see that even if there are many things we have to do, there is still quite a bit of time that we have a say over. And there's a lot we can do with that time if we're more organized and honest about it, not cramming in things just to do so, but making space for the things that are important to us, or, just savoring the open time if that's what we'd like to do.
Yeah, and it's that idea, I think, of 168 hours, and it doesn't have to be broken into hour blocks. And I think that's what your work has really shown, that, we can choose, as you say, be organized, but also sometimes when we get those little pockets of unintended or unexpected time, that we can use 15 minutes for something, or we can use 12 minutes for something, and we don't have to just go, oh, well, I thought I had that hour and now I don't, or, I need a full hour for this. You can always do something, even if it's not everything.
And small bits of time really do add up. I'm sure many of us have had the experience of looking at the screen time function on our phones and being like, I do not remember spending 3 hours a day on here doing random things, but it's because it's in little bits of time. It's 5 minutes here and there, 5 minutes while you're waiting for a phone call to start, 6 minutes while you're waiting for a fellow family member to come downstairs so you can leave. And these little bits of time exist Like they are there. And I'm not saying we can't organize our schedules to create longer blocks of leisure time, because we certainly can do that. And I hope people will do that. But when you learn to recognize that time doesn't have to be big to be usable, you can make
Mm,
space for a lot more cool things in your life. I mean, if you've got an hour of little bits of time in any given day, which I think is not unreasonable at all for people to
mm,
get when you add up these bits of time. I mean, that's 7 hours more a week you could be like reading, reading books in that bit of time. That's 2 more books a week. Like there's a lot of people who are like, oh, I could never read 100 books a year. Well, if you use these little tiny bits of time and, read, you could probably read 100 books a year right there. So
mm,
it's just about noticing the space and not having this idea that time needs to be long or leisure needs to look like a day at the spa in order
mm.
to exist.
Well, it's so helpful. It's such a helpful mind frame. Laura, you've tracked your own time for years, as you said, and you've had other people track it for you. What's a belief around time that you may have held for a long time that the data eventually proved wrong?
Well, one of my favorite topics in time is that people tend to overestimate how many hours they work. And this is just a phenomenon of people feeling like work takes a lot of time, right? It's a big thing in our
Mm.
lives. It's structured. Like you're never like, oh, where did that work day go? It's very much that people feel like it is a lot of time. We feel like we're working hard. We feel like we're, overworked in some cases. And so we put a number on that to quantify the feeling. But
Mm,
if you are getting paid by the hour, you know how many hours you are working. If you are not getting paid by the hour, it is a far more nebulous idea. Some weeks are probably shorter or longer than others. How do you count time when you had something at night, but you didn't have something before it? Or, and so people have a tendency to overestimate, to view their longest days and longest weeks as typical. I have done the same thing. For years, I've sort of talked about my 50-hour work weeks, and that's because I'd tracked my time here and there over the years and had worked about 50 hours a week those weeks. And then I started tracking my time continuously in April of 2015. And I saw pretty quickly that in the past, I had chosen very specific weeks to track, namely the
mm,
weeks when I was working 50 hours a week, because I was like, oh, that's what
mm,
my life looks like. That's the week I'm going to show. That's the week I'm going to call typical. Well, when I start tracking all my time, I can't do that. And so I found that those typical weeks, occurred. There were weeks that were longer than that, but the majority were less than that. And
mm.
so, it was a lot closer to 40 than it was to 50. And here I am writing about this topic, speaking about this topic, all over the place. And I've got 10 hours a week going somewhere completely different than I think they
Mm.
are. And it also matters. It's not just for like playing gotcha or something like, ooh, you think you work 60 hours a week and you worked 48. Like, oh, it doesn't matter from that perspective. It's just that if you're thinking about what you can take on or how long the timeline should be of a project, um, how much space you should be devoting to different things, if you don't know what a work week truly looks like, you're just guessing on all that. Or you may be
Mm,
wondering,
mm.
why is this project taking forever? Why am I not, meeting the deadlines that I thought I would? It's like, cool, because you've got 10 fewer hours a week that are available for this project than you thought there were.
It's so empowering to think of it in that way. And I remember, I've heard you make this point a few times, and it came really through to me when I read I know how she does it. And because you tracked so, it was a mosaic of so many professionals' time and, the way that the weeks were made up. And I was able to see just how much diversity there was. It got me thinking about, so I've got an education background, and when you're teaching in a classroom, it always fascinated me that you could set 45 minutes for an activity for every single child. When some children would need 10 minutes, some children would need 55 minutes, some children, so I think when we apply that to our own lives, who said that a standard workday has to be 9 to 5? Who said that me and my colleague that sit next to me, who have got a completely different brain and a completely different skill set and level of experience and aptitude, would do the same job in 8 hours with a 1 hour lunch break? It doesn't add up. So I find it so interesting and empowering that you could get introspective about your own use of time. And it often is a happy learning that you have more than you think that you did. And also in some cases, things take longer than you think that they should. And I find that an empowering idea as well, because for too long, I would set myself these kind of unrealistic deadlines. Brie, you had 2 hours. Why couldn't you get that done? Well, because I just couldn't get it done. And I set myself 2 hours for something that should have taken 2.5 hours. So I'll learn from that. So, the knowledge, the data is always so powerful. So really appreciate, that the work and the encouragement that your work gives us to be curious about our own aptitude and our own use of time. Now, Laura, many of my listeners are really ambitious people and they genuinely love their work. How can someone pursue big goals without falling into the trap of believing they'll be happy once things calm down?
Yeah, well, things won't calm down probably anytime soon. I mean, that's the nature of life, right? If you're hoping that next week will be different, well, I mean, maybe it will, maybe it won't. But I think we're probably best off building the lives we want in what we have going on now. But the good news is that many big goals can be broken down into small enough steps that they fit in a busy life. And so in Big Time, I have a whole chapter about dream big, plan small, and talk about big projects like reading War and Peace or listening to all the works of Bach, reading all the works of Shakespeare or Jane Austen, listening to all the works of Mozart, like very big projects. And what I have tended to do with these is spread them out over a year. So War and Peace is a very long book, but it is comprised of 361 extremely short chapters. So I read one extremely short chapter a day for 361 days and got through the book, finished on December 27th. Good book. I enjoyed it.
Wow.
But that's what you can do, right? If you can take something big and break it down into a small enough chunk of time that it fits easily into your day-to-day life, then you can make space for it. You don't have to wait till the future. And the upside of this is that then you start to convince yourself that you do have time to do big things. I mean, I can't tell myself, well, I'm starved for time. I have no time whatsoever. Like, Laura, you read War and Peace. Like, clearly you have time. You have a ton of time, as evidenced by the fact that you read War and Peace, right? And,
yes.
the fact
What
that
a
it was
great
only
proof point.
10 minutes a day doesn't, we don't need to tell my brain that.
No.
But it does change the story.
Yeah, I was thinking about this exact concept yesterday. I was out walking my dog and there's a huge building project going on in my neighborhood, in a house. It's being completely remodeled. And it seems like it's been going for over a year, and perhaps it has. And I think that's an example of such a huge undertaking that people would think, oh, you need to renovate this house. It is going to take 2 years. Why even bother? But I'm so inspired every time I walk past the house at all the different tradespeople working on their little corner. And I can just see tiny, tiny bits of incremental progress that it's such a good reflection on. It's like your War and Peace example of, it will be an enormous challenge, it will take a long time, but broken up into smaller jobs, smaller increments, one chapter 10 minutes a day, you will get there. And I think it's hard to compete with somebody who thinks in longer blocks of time, years or 2 years at a time, as opposed to weeks or months where you just get frustrated because you don't feel the needle is moving fast enough in the direction that you want to go.
And the thing is, eventually we're going to be on the other side of those 2 years, one way or another. Like, we'll be on the other side of those 2 years with a renovated house, or we'll be on the other side of those 2 years without a renovated house. But if we wish to have a renovated house, the time is going to pass anyway.
Yeah.
And so having the patience to see something through, there's all sorts of big things that can fit in a life.
Yeah, that's a really inspiring idea. And I love that, time will pass anyway. So did you have other plans? Like what else were we doing? We can, look back with regret, or we can look back and think, yeah, I'm glad I, committed to taking the first step. Laura, you write about developing a time abundance mindset. Do you think this is really a time management challenge, or is it an identity challenge about who we believe we need to be?
I think it's both. There are certain practical aspects of managing time that make it more possible to do the things you want to do in life, like having a good weekly planning session, a good weekly planning ritual where you sit down and figure out what is most important to you over the next week, what will make life feel great a week from now, what do you want to have accomplished in all different spheres of life. And so having that sort of regular routine and keeping moving forward on things will make life feel a lot more doable. And that's a time management thing. As we've talked about, it's about recognizing that small bits of time can still be used. It's about not losing too much time into transitions or into, various mental things about it. But I do think there's also a mindset aspect to all of this and an identity thing, as you said. I mean, a lot of people are very wedded to the idea of being this so busy, crazy busy, everybody wants something from me identity. And I think, it can be a badge of honor in some ways. It also keeps you from having to think about various questions. I mean, among them, if you assume you're so busy, you have no free time whatsoever, you don't think about what you're going to do with your free time. Because why would you? It doesn't exist. So that's a, stupid question to ask. But then when a spot of time does appear, as it does for everyone, even if it's in small chunks, you're going to do whatever is easiest, whatever is right in front of you, which these days tends to be our electronic hobbies, reading down to the 43rd comment on an article that was, designed to make you mad. So that's what we would spend the time doing. Whereas if you approach this from a perspective of, I do have free time, it may not be as much as I want, but I do have some. Then you can start to ask, well, what would I like to do with it? You can make a list of things you'd like to do. You can have ideas, start going to the library and getting books, subscribing to some magazines if you want to read that, have puzzles if you want to do that, to get your art materials out if you like to do that as a hobby. But then when a spot of time appears, you are not surprised that it has appeared because you are a kind of person who has free time. And these are the things you like to do with your free time. And so it's just a much more productive. It's a more effective mindset to have that we do have time. I also don't like the idea of like, oh, everybody wants so much from me. Because I think that's also, it's arrogance in a different form. That the world will not spin if I am not here. And for almost all of us, that is not true, right? Like, those of us who have relatively normal lives, everything will keep happening if we are not there. And you can view that as like terrifying, or you can be like, actually, that's kind of cool. Because that means if I want to let the rest of my family figure things out on Thursday night while I go sing in a choir, great. Like maybe they'll eat on paper plates. Maybe they'll order pizza. Not my problem. Everyone will be okay.
And then to come home on Thursday evening after your choir and everyone is okay is, such a powerful piece of proof that, you didn't need me.
Yeah.
And I think there's also, there's an egocentrism about that, isn't there? That if it's not me, then it won't get done, or, these unhelpful stories. It's something I need to catch myself on. I think it's an affliction of women and parents and all sorts of things around not having enough time and everybody else taking the time that I appear to have and that I could otherwise use for myself. And I think also that idea of, you use the, having a whole day at the spa example, that seems unlikely and unreasonable for somebody like me, for example. But a puzzle or some colouring in or reading my favourite book is entirely possible and probable, actually. Is it about being organised, and is it about knowing what lights you up in the first place, or what is a good use of your free time to make you feel good? I think that's something that you've come across?
Yeah, that's a very important first step. And some people know, like, there's things that you automatically think of, like, oh, if I had more time, I would do X. Well, you probably do have some time, so let's do X. But sometimes people really need to think about it for a while. It might help to think about, what did you enjoy doing as a kid or as a young adult? Maybe when you had fewer responsibilities, what did you spend your time doing? You could ask other people what they do for fun. Maybe if your friends enjoy a class at a pottery studio, it's a good chance you'd probably enjoy it as well. Or maybe there's other people you could learn to like something. Maybe some of your friends are going on a walk every Tuesday morning, and that would be fun for you to join them. Maybe you don't like walking, but you could learn. And it's just things like that. You can brainstorm a long list of things that would bring joy to your life. And then it is slightly about being organized in it. I mean, one of the things I talk about in big time is using your evening hours, right? The
Mm,
hours after work and before bed are kind of this wasteland of schedules
mm,
where people are tired. There's a lot of time passing. There's often 4 to 5 hours after work, but before bed. And you have no idea where it went. Now, there's some have to do's. Obviously, if you have kids or other people you're taking care of, you have to deal with them. But that tends not to take the whole 4 to 5 hours. And so it's like, okay, well, there's some time. What am I doing with it? And so I'm challenging people to think ahead of time. Like, what could I do that is fun for 30 minutes in the evening? Right? What would that be? And figure out the logistics, figure out what time roughly you'd be doing it. Do it, like make it happen, reflect on it and how it was. Like, did you enjoy it? Like, how did it feel? Did the world fall apart? Probably not. So could I do this again some other night? Well, maybe I could. And you start to build this habit of understanding what it is like to enjoy your time.
mm. Yeah, and it's I'm not sure if I said this in my email to you, but I ran a leadership retreat a little while ago, and it was just after I'd read Big Time. Sorry, it was maybe a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about the thing that Laura's talking about now is this idea of the golden hour, which is what you do. Really, we conceived it as after dinner and before bed. So, like once all of the kids' activities are done, or after dinner's finished and cleaned up, and you do have this kind of unused block of time that typically you'd sit on the couch and scroll your phone, or you would be, mindlessly watching some TV. We brainstormed all the things that the people in the room would do with that hour. And my goodness, the diversity was so funny because people were saying, "Ugh, I would hate to do a puzzle. That's my nightmare." And then other people were saying, I've got a group of friends who I keep saying, let's catch up, and we never do. So, she said, I'm going to schedule in a phone call with each one of those friends and do 3 a week. And, the excitement and the empowerment that came out of the room. But what was really fascinating to me was just how personal it was. And so that's why I asked that question about, do you need to interrogate what that will be for you and do some thinking about that? And then do you need to be organized? And I guess ready to trial and error too, to put things away if it's not particularly serving you.
Yeah, I mean, schedules and time management is all about trial and error and learning and curiosity. And did I like this? Did I not? And sometimes people don't really remember what it feels like to be in love with their schedule, to have that feeling of joy and what you're doing with your time. And for sure, there are things that are appealing to some people that sound absolutely unappealing to someone else. Like some people really like dramatic movies and I really just don't. Like, so the idea of like, sitting down with the popcorn at night after the kids are in bed and I'm like, ooh, we've got 2 hours to watch a movie. I'm like, please, I don't want 2 hours to watch a movie. I would rather do something else. But, somebody would look at my 1,000 piece puzzles. I always have 2 set up on my dining room table.
Okay.
I finish one, I start on the other. And somebody look at that like, what on earth? Like, why are you into this? Why do you have a favorite puzzle company? You have favorite puzzle artists at this point. What are you even doing with all these things? To each her own, right?
To each her own, absolutely. Laura, what's a piece of conventional productivity advice that sounds smart, but actually makes people feel more stressed and more time poor?
So I would be very careful about something that occasionally people talk about, like a 2-minute rule, which is that if there is something that comes up and you could just do it very quickly, you should just do it, because getting it back out onto your to-do list, setting a time later, getting back in the zone to do it will take longer than 2 minutes. So, you may as well do it. And there is something to this. Occasionally that is true. But the problem is, life often has so many 2-minute tasks that you can feel like you're never doing anything else. And if your 2-minute tasks are always an option, you may find it hard to focus on other things because you're like, well, I'm trying to do this deep work here, focus on this project, but I also need to order this birthday present, or, we're out of soap, or this permission slip needs to be signed. And I didn't get back that form to HR. And did I respond to Joe about that meeting? I need to send Joe the agenda. Like it's all these little tasks that have to happen. And you have carved out this time to work and they're pulling you away from it. So I believe in batching the little things, choosing a low energy block of time in your schedule and plowing through them. Now, you don't want to forget them. I think the problem is a lot of times people are like, well, I'm going to forget. No, you don't have to. You keep a list of them, right? Like, so if some 2-minute task occurs to you or it comes into your stream of your workflow, just write it down, keep it on the list, type it in your notes, whatever it is, and then get through all of them. And you can do a little version of this at the end of the day, sort of, if you have low energy at like 4:00 in the afternoon, but you're still got a little time before you're planning to head out. You could plow through the various low energy little tasks at that point. You can also save them up and do a bigger batch of it, like at the end of the week. Maybe Friday, if Friday is sort of a slower day for you, take an hour before lunch to plow through all of these. And this, keeps you from feeling like your life is consumed by 2-minute tasks, but it also keeps you from being tempted to pull yourself away from more important things. Because, sometimes it's hard to struggle through a deeper project or, working on a problem where you're not sure what the answer is. But I know for sure I could order that birthday present and it would be done. And so it's very tempting to do that instead. So this is to keep you from doing that.
Oh, that's, hugely helpful. So I was a bit worried when you said the 2-minute rule first. So the 2-minute rule you're talking about, I feel like in the productivity world, we throw these numbers around and sometimes they can mean different things. 2-minute rule you're talking about is that idea that if it's going to take 2 or less minutes, do it now. And so absolutely, that is so true. I call those my pocket tasks, meaning if I was in the doctor's waiting room or something, I could pull it out of my pocket and do it right then and sort of fill time that I otherwise, didn't realize that I'd have or whatever. But the other 2-minute rule, and the reason I was worried you were going to go there, was this idea that if you want to start a new habit, it's okay to do 2 minutes of it and not feel like, going for a run feels way too insurmountable. So it's okay to walk to the end of the street while you're starting that, new habit. So, but for sure, which is also in other circles called the 2-minute rule. So it's breaking something that you want to do, something bigger that you want to do right down. But I completely take that point about it being tempting. I would even use the word seductive, because the dopamine hit that you get when you book the flight or when you order the birthday present or when you, do the thing that is annoying you. And I would also argue that we can trick ourselves into thinking that that is taking away our mental energy from doing the important deep work. So it is very tricky to sort of have that conversation with our brain, isn't it? That, no, that's for later. That's the main reason I have a pad and pencil next to me at all times, because when the 2-minute seduction, or I remember something, or I write it down and put it away. So at least I know that's for 4 p.m. or that's for while I'm waiting for the kids to finish netball training or whatever it is, a low energy period, as you say. So yeah, I really real resonance there. Thank you. Now, Laura, if someone listening finishes this episode feeling overwhelmed, they won't. They'll feel completely empowered. But if they did, what is one small behavior they could implement this week that would give them a greater sense of time abundance almost immediately?
Well, certainly trying to set a 30-minute intention for the evening. So if you're listening to this podcast on your commute home from work, think about what you're going to do tonight. Like, what could you do that is fun for you for 30 minutes tonight? Do you have a magazine sitting around you'd like to read? A book that's been sitting on your bedside stand for the last 3 months, that you actually would want to pull it out? Or maybe it's beautiful weather, like, organize your family for a walk or go for a walk by yourself, or you could, maybe it's a baking project that you'd like to do tonight. You're like, I have a hankering for cookies for dessert, so I'm going to make that. But whatever it is, think about what you can do tonight that would be fun for you and try to make it happen. And I think that will make, obviously you'll enjoy doing whatever this is that you are doing for fun. That's the whole point of fun. But it will also change some of the story we tell ourselves. One of the reasons people think they work more than they do is because work is structured. Work involves other people. Work involves moving towards things. Whereas our time outside of work has a lot less than that. Because by design, you're not going to be sending calendar invites for dinner and blocking every 15 minutes of your time outside of work. But the problem is all those things that make work expand expand the mental space that it takes up, right? Beyond what its actual temporal space is.
Yes.
Whereas our time outside of work does not have those things. The time feels more forgettable. There's nothing you're doing. There's nothing to hook onto that happened that you can say, this is
Yes.
what I did tonight in that
Yes.
time. So change that. Change that. If you spend 30 minutes going on a sunset bike ride, you don't feel like the night didn't happen. Like the night clearly happened. You were on your bike going somewhere and you came back and you had that experience. So what did I do last night? I went on a bike ride. So the time doesn't disappear. And so it can start to mentally take up more of space in comparison to work. And so that can give you a better balance. I mean, I know I'm sort of rambling here, but one of the things I'm always pointing out to people is that in 168 hours, if you are working 40 hours a week and sleeping 8 hours a night, so that's 56 hours a week, you have 72 hours for other things. This is almost twice as much time as you're working. Yet almost nobody who works full time believes that they have almost twice as much time as they are working in waking, non-working hours. And that's because it doesn't feel like it. The work time feels big. The time that is twice as big outside of work does not feel big. It feels small. So let's make it feel bigger. And then even though we haven't changed our work hours, we feel like we have a far more balanced life.
Oh, I love it. Does it have something to do with that idea of like chronos and logos? You know, that when you're doing something that you love, say it's a bike ride, time goes really, really quickly. And then when you're in a budget meeting, you feels like the clock is going backwards. Is it something to do with we overestimate how long we're working because it's not as fun? And the fun and flow aspect of the joyful things seem to go quickly in a mental
There's
sense.
obviously, that's human nature, right? The things that you don't want to do feel like they take longer than the things that you do want to do. I mean, pain is more noticeable than pleasure.
Yes.
You're aware of time when you have a toothache versus time when you're feeling good. So it's human nature to do that. And so the real trick is to change any time that feels unpleasant, right? So if we can move any minutes out of the counting minutes category and into something more neutral and pleasant, that's a big win. But if we can also take the good stuff and make it slow down a little, that's helpful. So part of that is just learning to savor it. Putting stuff in ahead of time is great because then you can anticipate it and you get some of the pleasure that you're going to have in the moment stretched out a far longer period of time. So that's good. You reflect on it afterwards and do new and novel things. That makes, time feel bigger in the moment than if you don't. So, there's all sorts of ways to kind of change how we're experiencing time, even if time is moving forward at the exact same rate, regardless of what we do.
I think that's so important, that our relationship with time. It's that idea of having a holiday booked and the excitement of looking forward to the holiday for weeks and weeks and weeks, having the holiday, taking photos on the holiday, and then looking back at the photos of the holiday and feeling the joy again is such a lovely way to capture that time. And so it doesn't feel like everything I love goes too quickly and everything I don't love takes forever. Yeah, that's amazing. Now, Laura, last question. You've spent years studying how people spend their hours. When you do look at the people who seem energized, who seem like they're thriving, that they're fulfilled, and not necessarily successful by traditional measures, what patterns do you notice in how they spend their time?
Well, I think they are spending their hours in ways that they enjoy. And this is a key distinction because a lot of times, especially when people are looking at jobs, for instance, or careers they might have, we look at things like, how much does it pay? Is it prestigious? Does it impress people that I talk about it? Does it sound vaguely interesting when I describe it? But we don't think about what you're going to spend your minutes doing. And it's the spending your minutes that influences how happy you are. And so we want to be spending our minutes in enjoyable ways. And that's different for everyone. And you have some control over it. I mean, if you're working with 5 people and you really love 2 of them and you're not so fond of 3 of them, maybe you could figure out how you do more projects with the 2 people you really like, right? And then we're going to have more fun moments. Our minutes at work are going to feel better versus, you're earning the same regardless. Like you're describing your job the same regardless. It looks the same on your resume regardless, but that's going to change the hour by hour experience of work in a very profound way.
Oh, I love it. Spend hours, not time. What are you going to spend your minutes doing? Or how can we? I think that's a perfect way to end the episode, Laura. Just that idea that seeing 168 hours is broken down into minutes, and we have sort of more power and more agency and more autonomy over that time than perhaps our brain is telling us to. Um, it's late in the afternoon, early evening over in the US, where you've been so generous in giving us this little bit of time, Laura, and we're so grateful. Would you like to tell our listeners what you're looking forward to, what's coming up for you, and where they can find you and your excellent work?
Yeah, well, you can come visit me at my website, which is lauravanderkam.com. It's just my name. I blog there several times a week, kind of old school blogging. I have information there about all my books, including Big Time, about my podcasts, my newsletters. And what I'm looking forward to, I'm working currently on a new book that is going to explore this golden hours concept a little bit more in evenings.
Great.
And I may have a trip to, Sydney planned at some point in the next few months. So,
how exciting.
get to Australia at some point, so that's
how
great.
lovely. Hopefully, in a few months, the weather will be a little bit warmer for you by then, and you'll be able to spend some time by the harbour. I'm sure our Australian friends will be really lucky to have you. So, Laura, a huge thank you for the generosity and of your wisdom and your insights. Thank you for all the work that you're doing. And thank you for saying yes to coming on the Habit Nerd podcast. A lot of what I talk about, the listeners will hear resonance in your messaging. And, I really want you to know how inspiring you and your work have been to me, and then hopefully lots of the people that I've gotten to work with over the last little while as well. So thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
If this episode resonated with you, I'd love you to share it with someone who might need it too. Because sometimes one conversation, one idea, or one small shift can change everything. Thank you for being with me here on the Habit Nerd podcast. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which this episode was recorded, the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people of the Kulin Nation, and pay my respects to their elders past and present. Take care, habit nerds, and remember the habits you practice today are quietly shaping your tomorrow.